So, in one of the recent updates, we unexpectedly saw a new premium commander added to the game in the form of Sararer. His name is annoyingly like a tongue twister, with him sounding like Sararer, as if he was an NPC in a Hello Kitty adventure game, rather than probably the most overpowered commander ever added to GoTWiC. And he comes with a very bloated kit here, lots of stuff to get into in this awakening ability on top of actually understanding what this means, because it doesn't actually make any sense. You're not stupid, this just doesn't make sense, and I'll get into report analysis to show exactly what it means. And he also has the addition of a new stat in the form of counter damage increase as well. We will go into everything you need to know about him now. So to date, we've only been able to get medals for him. With his release will, you would expect them to, of course, be more readily available in future. At the top here, you can see he has combat rate in the tavern, so no leadership. For something that premium, it's not the best tavern stats in my opinion. And you can see in this column here what he'll give at 4 stars, awakening, and gold. So the stat split is kind of unique for something at this price point in that he doesn't actually give that many attack stats. He has 40% total attack and 26% spear attack on his hidden bonuses. His spear health will stack extremely high, but the most important thing here he'll be providing you stats-wise is this spear damage increase versus infantry. So you can see down here exactly how this shows in a report, where it will take the default 50% damage dealt to your counter to 74%. So if you have, say, 80% anti-counter with 40% from Dana, 40% from weapons, you're very close at this point, if you have Sararer as well, of near enough going neutral against even your counter, which means you can really just min-max one unit type, and I think until the infantry and cavalry alternatives of this are released into the game, this will be very dominant at the top levels of the game, just because even bleed infantry struggles a lot against this build right now, because now you can start actually pumping out large amounts of damage to even your counter. So I have a lot of report analysis in here, which I'll get into. All of that is taken from this report here, with Ayrmidon being present with the Sararer, which will become relevant. You've got Drake to compare healing percentages and timings to over here, and there's multiple lines for Sararer's 4-star ability to hit as well. So if we look at his 4-star ability, at the start of battle, heal all allied spearmen lineups once every 5 seconds by 5% of the damage. At the start of battle, cast Poisonous Fog upon all enemy troops once every 6 seconds, damage amounting to 5% of a troop's attack. If weakness attack is inflicted on the target, another 5% damage will be dealt. So these 5% tooltips, just ignore them. They are just a mistranslation, I think, and I will show exactly what they are and map out exactly what they give you as well as I go down here. But a few things to note. Poisonous Fog here hits all enemy troops, so this means that weakness as a synergy is getting AoE damage through Sararer. Bleed already had AoE damage through Daeron. Female had it through Cersei and Daenerys, and this is important because it gives a weakness a means of hitting the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th lines, and hitting into those lineups which have drastically lower health and defense stats, and through that you'll be able to rack up a lot more enemy defeated in those situations. The damage across a fight will trigger at 7, 13, 19, 25, 31, and 37 seconds. If we look here at this line of the report, Sararer here is hitting all lineups, so this is 5 infantry lineups, 5 spearmen, 5 cavalry. Across those 5 infantry lineups, if you divide it by 5, you'll get 1,441 here. And then if we look at the damage of the first weakness attack, which is attacking into effectively no stacks of weakness, it is 3,052 kills. So one attack is 100% coefficient. You divide that by 2, it's approximately what you're getting from one lineup being hit by this first part of Poisonous Fog. So all enemy lineups are being hit by 50% coefficient of damage. That is the exact same as Daeron. And as you see down here, just like Daeron as well, the second modifier will be 150% the same as Daeron is with Bleed. So you can cross-reference the maths there if you want. But the key thing here is damage coefficient across the fight. And you can see the value of Sararer's damage drastically increases as more lineups come into play. And of course, this is just raw numbers. The more lineups you're hitting into, the lower their defensive stats will be, so the more significant these coefficients will actually be as well. And you can see at the end here, it really spikes when Ayrmidon is involved. That is because Ayrmidon will randomly apply weakness attack stacks onto front row lineups. And of course, the way weakness attacks work is every lineup affected by the weakness attack state will attack the lowest health lineup, and that will typically end up being the same lineup because they'll just all start hitting the same one, and they'll progressively start becoming more and more lower in troop numbers, and there's just no way to change that situation until that lineup dies. So you'll only ever have weakness attack stacked onto one front row lineup unless Ayrmidon is involved, and then you can start randomly applying it. So this damage here is basically Daeron damage. The effect in terms of damage is basically the exact same. As I was analysing reports, Ayrmidon was typically stacked onto an average of around 4 front row lineups with those weakness attack stacks. So you'll be getting 4 times 150% every single 6 seconds. So the damage itself is insane, just as a damaging effect. On top of that, when you add in the counter damage increase, it's incredible. But the thing with Sararer is he's so bloated, he also has this heal. And you'll note here in the Sararer lineup, there's no Drake. So Sararer actually replaces Drake as a spear healer. And he starts healing, if we look down here, at 7 seconds instead of 11 to 14 seconds, depending on if you have his weapon equipped or not on Drake. So you're going to be squeezing out, say, 5, 6, 7 additional seconds of weakness attacks, which is going to be a huge damage increase across the course of the fight, because of course the earlier you cast that, the earlier you can start stacking up the weakness stacks. And that's always been the main weakness of the weakness synergy, really, and how slow it is to start getting online. So by 14 seconds and your healing gets started, you start getting into a stronger and stronger position. But by that point, your troop numbers could have just been decimated because you have such low damage output up to that point. Sararer directly mitigates that main weakness. And then if we look down here as well, if we compare the actual healing values compared to Drake directly, which is the direct competition here, you'll get 10 triggers from Drake, because he heals every 3 seconds, to only 7 triggers for Sararer. But Sararer heals 5% of wounded, compared to just 1% of wounded for Drake. So Sararer actually heals 350% as much as Drake does. You can see the difference in healing numbers down here. This was at, I think, 11 seconds for both of them, and I had to use a different report to find these numbers. But you can really see how many more troops are going to start being healed throughout a fight by using Sararer. And in-combat healing is effectively army size because you're gaining troops throughout the fight to deal damage, which you wouldn't have had otherwise. So he's the best heal in the game. He has basically the best AoE damage in the game. He has a giant buff to damage against your counter. And on top of all of that, he can substitute into a lineup as the synergy enabler. And he doesn't even have to take the spot of another premium commander if you are spending at that level, which is absolutely huge. One thing to note with his heal, if you look here in this report, for example, he heals, the weakness attack state disappears, and then the spearmen don't actually weakness attack. This will happen, from what I've seen, maybe 2-3 times a fight, where you lose 1 second of weakness attack uptime. That does not happen with Drake. Drake has 100% weakness attack uptime. I'm not sure this is actually intentional, but it is what happens in reports currently. But because of this, there is an argument to keep Drake in lineups because you will get more weakness attacks stats through that. But for all intents and purposes, Sararer definitely can replace Drake as the healer in a spear weakness lineup. So all of that, I think he is by far the most power creeped PvP commander ever released. There has to be an infantry and a cavalry equivalent released as well, because you can't only have a spearman equivalent with this counter damage increase released. So I do think we're seeing a trend where premium commander medals are being given out a lot more easily than they were before, with the likes of recharge events and new packs. But then new premium commanders seem to be getting added in on top of that, which you would assume will not be as easy to obtain. Past your normal world map style combat, you also have the RTS game modes now as well, which are becoming increasingly more and more important in this game with Siege Winterfell, Lost Realm, All Out War, and Sararer is also ridiculous in that. So he has maxed out spear stats, he has an AoE heal that's about the equivalent of Sansa's heal, he has a solid active spear attack buff, but then he has, similar to Jamie, a crit passive as well. So Jamie is 30% crit chance and Sararer is 60%. This is a big leap because through it you can effectively keep Dana's spear attack passive permanently stacked in that 5 seconds where it can potentially drop off. And I think the most min-maxed RTS lineups will definitely be Sararer Baelish Dana or Sararer Ayrmidon Dana. But that duo of Sararer and Dana now, primarily just because of being able to keep that spear attack at 3,000, 4,500% buffed at all times, will probably be what you'll mostly see out of max account Lord Marches now in the likes of Siege Winterfell and All Out War.